didn't know humans could be such pests?
Where is the princess?
Humans are more tasty when angry, and I haven't eaten in a while.
With the huge success of the Resident Evil games in the late 90s on the PlayStation 1, Capcom took it upon themselves to experiment with the formula that worked so well for them with Resident Evil and apply it to a completely new concept that somehow still feels familiar with the at the time PlayStation 2 exclusive Onimusha Warlords. Released in 2001, Onimusha would deviate from being the true survival horror experience we became accustomed to by heavily focusing on the action with this entry. Onimusha is set in 16th century feudal Japan with an ongoing civil war between warlords clouding the land that is spearheaded by Nobunaga Oda, who is on a conquest to unify all of Japan. Nobunaga's takeover is unceremoniously cut short when he is killed during a battle, or so it seems, and that's where Onimusha's story begins to get into the thick of it. The game centers around Samanosuke Akechi, a masterless samurai who receives a letter of distress from Princess Yuki of the Sato clan reporting that strange disappearances are occurring in her home of Inabiyama Castle. The princess believes that this is the work of monsters, and Samanosuke alongside his ninja companion Kaide rush to meet her only to discover that she is now missing as well. It isn't long until Samanosuke tracks the princess down and he is instantly ambushed by demons, which he quickly realizes he is powerless to stop. After getting knocked into next week, he falls unconscious and he is drawn into a deep dream where he is visited by the mysterious ogre clan. The leader of the ogres provides him with a magical gauntlet that has the ability to capture and harness the souls of demons that will aid in his fight against them. From there, Samanosuke and Kaede embark on a quest to save the princess, battling demons, sometimes solving puzzles, meeting interesting characters, discovering the game's lore through finding items scattered around the different environments, and ultimately uncovering the sinister plan of the demons. The story unveils itself bit by bit through its cinematic and in-game cutscenes and is intriguing enough to sustain your interest given Onimusha is quite a short game. Capcom took great inspiration for Onimusha's setting and story from the legendary films of Japanese director Akira Kurosawa, and the influence is showcased throughout the entire game, let alone the first 5 minutes with its remarkable motion-captured cinematic intro. For its time, Onimusha hit all the right spots in terms of its graphics, as Capcom didn't hold back on the expenditure and they heavily invested all around to deliver a satisfying visual experience. The pre-rendered backgrounds are brightly colourful and picturesque, with careful detail and attention given to almost every area in the game. You'll traverse through sections that are quite grotesque and eerie that'll make your skin crawl, and others, like this area with a waterfall, that are calm and serene. The character models are wonderfully created with noticeable facial expressions and incredibly highly detailed clothing, armour and weapons that tick all the right boxes. Enemy designs are also worth mentioning, with Capcom's stellar imagination of collating and bringing every person's nightmare to life in the form of undead soldiers with their rib cages sticking out, slimy octopus-like abominations, and an oversized demon with huge teeth and claws, to name a few. The sound production is just as fantastic as the visuals, with a majestic orchestral background that sets the tone so well that it feels like it carries the entire game along on its own, and the sound effects during gameplay, like the clashing of weapons, slicing through demons, and enemy sounds hit the bullseye. You have the option to select from the English and Japanese voiceovers, and personally I went with the Japanese version with English subtitles, purely based off that the English version is a little over the top for my liking and I could constantly spot the lip syncing was way off. In saying that though, I can see how the English voiceovers being over the top are part of its charm, and it reminds me of watching a badly dubbed action movie only for its awesome action scenes. Gameplay wise, it can be difficult not to draw comparisons with Resident Evil up to the point where Onimusha was released, because it heavily leans into everything that made Resident Evil so great. It adopts the same camera angles that enhance the sense of claustrophobia and suspense, a similar control scheme with new additions to the layout since this game has a solid focus on close quarters combat, and of course its famous inventory system which you can access and equip items you find along the way. While the attack animations are fantastic, movement can feel a little stiff while you're walking or running around. Thankfully though, there are mobility options such as dashing backwards, doing a complete 180, and a lock-on feature that more than makes up for it otherwise feeling restrictive. As Samanosuke, you're able to execute basic attacks that can be chained into a combo, you can block incoming attacks, lock onto and focus on enemies, and there are additional moves you will discover like putting enemies down for the count with a downward stab. If your reflexes and timing are impeccable, you can satisfyingly counterattack an enemy strike at the last second with or without blocking to eviscerate them with ease, and I just never get tired of seeing this animation over and over again. The change of pacing of this game can feel quite seamless since it can either be slow or very fast depending on how you approach each encounter. If you simply just go into each battle with several enemies and deal with them individually, especially later in the game, then it'll take you a while to take them out. Whereas by taking the time to learn the combat system and making use of the mechanics, then most battles can be over in a flash. And that is the beauty of Onimusha's combat, is that you're constantly learning and honing your ability to use those skills with each and every encounter. Progressing through the story, you will stumble across 3 magical orbs that come with a matching unique elemental weapon. These weapons have distinctive attributes that are useful in certain situations, and they also come with their own special attack sequence that can be initiated just by the press of a button. Other weapons are available like bows and rifles, and while you won't really use them too often, the rifles are a blast to mess around with and they certainly pack a punch. One of the most important features of the gameplay is being able to capture the souls of demons thanks to the gauntlet you acquire from the ogres. Defeating enemies releases their souls, which need to be manually obtained during combat, and there are 3 different types, with the most important being red souls that can be used to enhance your weapon's strength and upgrade the orbs themselves, which are vital in progressing to new areas. In order to enhance those items, there are shrines located throughout the game, and this allows you an opportunity to save your progress as well. During some sequences, the game will automatically switch you to play as Kaede, and while she cannot absorb souls or be upgraded in any way, there isn't an incentive to engage enemies with her unless you absolutely have to. But it's difficult not to when she's surprisingly fun to use. She can execute basic attacks, throw around kunai, and show off her ninja skills by jumping behind enemies to perform a backstab on them. Her initial starting weapon is not great, but eventually you come across a new one which makes short work of most enemies. Given the game's heavy emphasis on combat, it is a nice change of pace switching between both characters, and it otherwise offers reprieve by breaking it up with exploration, leaving it up to the player to find their own way. Puzzles have also found their way into the game, and even though there isn't a lot of them compared to Resident Evil, they're still relatively decent, with the standouts being the number matching puzzles that are initiated by trying to unlock certain chests, and a timer-based puzzle you undertake as Kaede to save Samanosuke from drowning. Most enemies have a fairly simple approach of being dealt with, but some like the octopus guys and these tall demons that can turn invisible require a little more attention and strategy around dispatching them efficiently. At one point in the game, you can access what's known as the Dark Realm, which is an optional combat challenge that pits you against 20 waves of enemies and puts your combat skills to the test. And completing it rewards you with a ton of red souls and an item that leads towards locating a secret weapon towards the end of the game. Another way Onimusha tests your skills is through its exceptional boss fights, and while there aren't many, each encounter forces you to mix it up and make use of the mobility options where possible, as they don't pull any punches. This game isn't without its flaws, and while there might be some minor issues here or there that are not worth mentioning, like having to change weapons using the inventory system, none of them stand out as much as there being no option to skip in-game cutscenes even if you have already seen them before. Avoiding death is the whole purpose when playing video games, but in Onimusha you should have more motivation than ever before not to die so you don't have to rewatch a cutscene. In saying that though, Onimusha isn't a very difficult game, and the difficulty doesn't really ramp up until just past the halfway mark. If you do however want more of a challenge, then Capcom has you covered with Genma Onimusha. In 2002, Capcom would release what you could consider a director's cut version of the game exclusively to the Xbox, and it's honestly Onimusha on steroids. I won't go into too much detail as I do plan on reviewing this version down the line, given the changes and additions make it an almost entirely different game. Genma at its core keeps the fundamental structure of the original version but amplifies it by introducing new gameplay mechanics and a brutal increase to the difficulty that fans of the original wouldn't be ready for. For fans just looking to revisit the original, or if you're trying it out for the first time, a remastered version was released a few years back that's available on current gen consoles and on PC, that featured updated graphics, better movement controls, and the option to change weapons without using the inventory system. Sadly though, it has a different soundtrack compared to the original that is still good, and disappointingly there is still no option to skip in-game cutscenes. Good one, Capcom. Onimusha as a whole is one epic samurai adventure that doesn't disappoint, and it delivers a stunning visual experience with movie-style production values that begs to be seen and revisited time and time again. The thrilling combat system is deep and can be approached in a variety of ways, with all the tools you're given to slice and dice through demons however you please. While it isn't the only entry in the saga and future entries would improve upon this game's foundation, Onimusha Warlords is definitely at heart the most iconic.